This is GovLove, a podcast about local government, brought to you by engaging local government leaders, and, drum roll please, it's the GovieLovies.
The GovieLovies.
The GovieLovies.
All your hosts are here to award our favorite episodes of the year. I am Ben Kittelson, senior consultant at Ref Telus.
I'm Toney, Thompson, an innovation strategist for Wake County, North Carolina.
I'm Lauren Palmer, the Director of Local Government Services for the Mid-America Regional Council.
I'm Dan Bolin. I'm a local government attorney, land use attorney, and partner at Ansel Glink in Chicago.
And I'm Kirsten Wyatt, the ELGL co-founder and a fellow at the Beck Center for Social Impact and Innovation at Georgetown University.
So for our last episode of the year, as you know, or as our loyal listeners know, we like to look back and highlight some of our best episodes, our best interviews. For this year will be our 7th year producing GovLove. So pretty, I mean, man.
Lucky number
it
7.
Could be a second grader. Is that how old our podcast is?
I have no idea.
That's our target demo. That's kind of the level of content that we're trying to produce.
Right on.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest with you. One thing I can't do is, if you gave me a grade, like how to figure out how old a kid should be in that grade, I always have to do like 18 minus the grade to figure out what age they're.
Yeah.
That sounds way more complicated than, yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you say second grade, I was like 7 years old is way too old for second grade, but I don't have no idea.
Nope.
Well, before we get into awarding our best episodes of the year, we are going to do a lightning round with our host, which, you know, as our listeners know, is a tradition on every episode of GovLove. But for our first lightning round question to each of our hosts, what was your favorite highlight of 2022? And I did say favorite highlight, so I don't know if that means it's the best highlight or your only highlight. Or
Yeah, I'll go. So I really enjoyed back in April, you know, we were able to do, ELG was able to do a collaboration with NFBPA and being able to go to their conference and do a series of podcasts with some of their members and just talk about GovLove topics that they were all in attendance for, and being able to go to that conference was definitely a highlight for me.
Nice.
Awesome. Good work, Toney. Those were some good episodes.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll go next. I'm going to share a professional highlight from the year. I think our listeners know that my work at the Regional Council in Kansas City is I have the very awesome job of getting to support 119 cities and 9 counties in our metro region. And one of the projects I worked on this year was a mental health collaborative with community mental health centers on the Missouri side of our state line, trying to help those agencies prepare for the implementation of 988, which started this summer as the new National Suicide Prevention Hotline. So we were very excited through that collaborative work. We got a major federal grant for about $3 million. There were only 12 awarded nationwide. Wow. And we're using that money to continue our collaborative and work on a better system for mobile crisis response. So when people call that 988 hotline, that there's a system in place for community response for individuals in crisis who need that support. So really proud of the work. It's really collaborative. It's equity focused. It's going to help a lot of people. It's all the things we talk about and love at GovLove.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That is awesome. I can't top it. But in terms of and for me, I thought of a personal highlight, and that was my son turned 1 year old this year, and I turned 40 years old around the same time. We had a joint birthday party. It's mostly his, and at the beach along Lake Michigan. There's a cool little a patio we rented out. It was especially it's getting colder now. I'm thinking fondly back to that time in the summer, hanging out at the beach, and it was lots of friends and family. We weren't really dragging our kid around to too many, our under 1-year-old to too many indoor gatherings or gatherings or otherwise until he was while he was so young. So it was the first time a lot of friends and family got to meet him. So it was a really important, meaningful time for me. Will he remember it? Probably not, but that's fine. It was a good party, and that's my highlight of 2022 for me.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. What was
that the
your
first-
birthday? Oh, sorry.
I was just saying, is that the first 1-year-old, 40-year-old birthday party ever, or
Yeah,
are you an innovator?
yeah,
Oh,
maybe that I know of. Well, it's the only one I've attended. That's to be clear.
I wanted to ask if you had a theme. Like, did you finally get that Elmo birthday party that you'd always dreamed of?
It was definitely heavy on the beach theme, like beach
theme,
balls, lots of pails and beach toys to throw at my friends' children, and I think they're very deeply appreciative and still have the cheap plastic that I gave them, and still have sand in their cars from visiting us from those many months ago.
That's sand. Can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
Dan, you're a lawyer. I feel like for liability reasons, we have to say, audience, please don't throw things at the children. We're not promoting that.
Right.
GovLove.
No, don't throw at the children. Just like
Excuse me.
or near
They're in
them,
the vicinity.
or
Right.
yeah, don't do any of that stuff, guys. That's my advice. That's our advice.
No one can
Leave it to
prove
the
intent.
lawyers.
That's the GovLove motto. Don't throw things at children.
If you learn nothing else from this podcast.
Yep.
Well, I don't even know how I follow that. I mean, we're talking 40th birthdays, throwing things at children. But I feel like my one of the highlights, or something that I'll remember 2022 for, was the implosion of Twitter and watching everybody's favorite social media platform kind of melt down, and then watching people threaten to leave it and then leave it. And I think the reason why it's memorable for me is because I feel like GovLove and ELGL, to a certain extent, really got a lot of life and listeners and followers because of Twitter, much more so than Facebook, as we were discussing before the show started, that none of us use because we're all too cool and hip now to be on Facebook. And so for me, watching Twitter melt down was like the ultimate reality show. It was a train wreck you couldn't look away from. And I'm still very intrigued about the ways that we will continue to connect with our listeners heading into 2023. This has been a great place. Twitter's been a great place for us to find episode ideas. I've reached out to many guests in DMs to see if they'd come on the show. And so as I reflect on GovLove in 2022, I think that might be my highlight. And, for better or for worse, I guess we'll see how it plays out. But I'm hopeful that as we head into the new year, we will find other ways to promote our episodes, connect with folks, follow trends, share funny gifts. And I don't know if that's Mastodon, but I recently joined just to be sure, be safe. But we'll see. So I'll add that as my highlight.
I was going to say we should become a primarily Snapchat-based podcast.
Ooh.
Or do we move to like a subreddit?
Yeah, like a subreddit.
Yeah.
Be real niche.
Well, ELGL has a Reddit, and we tried to get it to catch on for a while, but it never did. But now could be the time. We could strike.
Bring it back.
Yeah.
I think it's still there. It's just, quiet. So, so we'll see.
Yeah, we should. I'm going to try to find that because I'm very interested in what those comments are.
Yeah, it's an ongoing implosion. I feel like it's still happening before our eyes, as we're recording at least.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. So everybody meet Kirsten over in Mastodon. We'll all follow. My highlight for the year. So we hit a pretty impressive milestone, I think. We released episode number 500 of GovLove earlier this year. which
Here, that's an achievement.
Which, I mean, feels insane to say out loud that there's been 500 episodes of us talking into the mic about some of the nerdiest topics probably on the internet. But it's pretty cool. And I think we had a good time looking back at some of our, our favorite episodes that we've ever released, not just of the year, but ever. Mm-hmm. And also talking a little bit about kind of the history of ELGL and some of our, we let Mike and I got to have a whole producer's pick segment. So that was a really fun episode. We'll link to it in kind of the notes for this one. But that was definitely my GovLove highlight of the year. So episode 500. I can't wait to see 1,000. It'll happen before we know it.
That's right.
Well, and I think we mentioned it on that. I was going to say, I think we mentioned it on that episode, but the statistics for well-intentioned but never finished podcasts is shocking. I think it was like 90% of podcasts don't get beyond 5 or 10 episodes. And so I think it also speaks to this incredible group of volunteers we have who take in their spare time, the time to script and produce and record these episodes to keep at it. So I think that's really the local Gov spirit.
Yeah, and let me just add to that, Kirsten, it says so much about our audience who just keeps being awesome in the work that they do and creating stories for us to tell. It's just like we could do another 500 episodes because there's so many great people in local government doing great work that's interesting and worth making into an episode.
Yeah, exactly.
And to be clear, we are one of the well-intentioned podcasts. There are many podcasts out there with bad intentions. We were talking about an idea before we got started, where I had an idea for a podcast for dogs, where we just tell information to them at a frequency that only they can hear, not their owners. That podcast has bad intentions. It's like telling secrets to dogs against their owners' wishes. And that's just why it's just so significant that GovLove has made it so long. Kudos to our audience, of course, but also like Ben and Kirsten and all our longtime hosts, past and present, that made the podcast such a success. So kudos to you guys, especially the old heads on the crew.
Yeah. And moving forward, we could still overlay those secret dog messages over our own episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's work on that.
Yeah, tell Pizza Mike to add a secret channel to this episode.
Yeah.
Tune in, dogs. Like and subscribe.
Yeah. Just smash that subscribe button.
All right. All right. So for our next lightning round question, what was one of your dream interviews? What's your dream interview or topic for an episode that you want to do in 2023 outside of, the All Dog podcast?
I'll start. I'm really interested in anyone right now who is talking about imagination in the delivery of fire services. And there are a lot of communities who are doing work in this space, but, departments that are really kind of evolving beyond the traditional 24-hour work schedules, minimum staffing models. We got to have a certain number of fire stations and really thinking more holistically about being a community service agency, a smarter way to address kind of those community medical needs through community paramedics, just really being thoughtful about what is the smartest way to deliver the right resources at the right moment for emergency and non-emergency situations. So I'm going to stop there. I could say a lot. I have a lot of curiosity around that topic and people who are kind of reinventing service delivery in the public safety realm. And so if that's you, call me. Make you a guest on GovLove.
I love it. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, I like the drones that shoot water on fires. That's like a real thing, and is a pretty wild and crazy thing. I just want one.
Who's doing that? Yeah, we need to talk to that person on GovLove.
We got a few in the Chicago area. I'll call
him, Dan.
Yeah,
I want to hear that episode.
Absolutely. But more importantly, my dream topic is, and this has been a dream for many years, is to interview Mayor McCheese. He is the mayor of McDonaldland, as many know. McDonald's owns the most real estate on earth, second to only the Catholic Church. And I can only imagine the service delivery challenges managing all this non-contiguous property. I think most communities, there's a contiguity requirement for their corporate limits, but this worldwide land, and seeing how he does it, and having a cheeseburger for a head, it's a real big challenge. But also this year, I'm the co-chair of the American Planning Association Planning and Law Division Education Committee. And one thing that we're interested and hopeful to do is some more partner at some GovLove episodes with the APA PLD and bring some interesting topics at the intersection of planning and law. So if you've got topics out there, dear listeners, please let us know. We're looking for opportunities to bring them to you. So that's my goal for 2023.
I hope Mayor McCheese has some like law and transportation issues. You could just really combine those two.
Oh, I mean, just the planning issues with drive-through lanes in the first place. That's every single. That's why they require special use permit in many communities. And hey, that the mayor needs to be prepared to seek those approvals, I guess.
Well, and I would think like the length of term and, term limits, and if that's ever been a threat, and then just hiring convicted felons with a Hamburglar on staff. And then, I think we can all agree that Grimace probably has some, I don't know, maybe shady roots in his past. So I think that there's a lot of topics you could delve into, and perhaps we could structure it like a series similar to what we did this year with a couple of our other topics. I would be happy to help you out with that if you need it.
No, thank you for agreeing to partner on that. That's a very, it could be an inspiring series, as you pointed out.
Mm-hmm. Is Grimace the purple one?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I feel like he wiggles his fingers a lot, which kind of gives me the creeps.
He has fingers?
Fingers, but not big arms.
Just little paws. Yeah. Just little T-Rex arms.
Yeah. But yeah, another person overcoming different challenges and doing his work.
I know. Poor Grimace. I feel like he's getting a bad rap.
Hey, we'll give him a good one here on GovLove podcast.
I think the most interesting thing you said about that, Dan, is that the Catholic Church still owns more land on earth than McDonald's.
That is 100% true fact that I learned at my wife's architecture school graduation when the architect for McDonald's was the speaker at the commencement, and he's like, hey, some people are like, oh, there's not much special about architecture to McDonald's, right? But he's like, but if you think about it, you're influencing the built environment across the entire world, and that's on a whole lot of real estate. So I was like, oh, that's an interesting fact, and I'll use that to do a bit on a podcast someday.
Impressive. Learn something new on every podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Well, it's hard to follow that lofty goal of having Mayor McCheese on, because all I'm really interested, or one of my goals for 2023, is to continue some of the work that all of us have done this year and last year on HR and hiring in local government. And I feel like this past year, we've all talked at some point about this idea of COVID being over and what that means for the Great Resignation, and the fact that I think all of our agencies have seen people leaving, and we've had spots or positions that are really hard to fill. And so as we get, a little bit more time, I would love to talk more with folks to talk about how they solve that or how they've addressed it. and really specifically around remote work, which I think has been a topic on this podcast for a couple of years now. But recognizing the fact that as people have more choice, it's maybe forcing government's hand to do more in allowing remote work, either having it be state specific or even anywhere. We've had some great guests in the past talk about that even before COVID, but would love to dig into that more as we head into the new year as well. So again, no cartoon characters for fast food restaurants, but talking again about the humans, the real people that do the work, in addition to digging into some of those hard-hitting McDonald's municipal issues.
Similarly, I'm fascinated by at the local level how cities and jurisdictions are tackling climate change and resiliency. I think moving to Florida, this has become an even more top of mind thing for me. And with the 2 hurricanes that went through, our state this year, we saw some of the erosion that happens and the damage that can happen from a changing climate. And so learning more about kind of how cities are tackling this, I've done a few episodes on that this year, and so I want to continue to highlight the good work that's happening in that area, because I think it's only going to become a bigger challenge for local governments. So if there are folks that have ideas around that, or hey, this community that I live in or I work for is trying something out, I definitely want to highlight them. So get at me. But similarly, I think that's like HR and hiring and the changing workforce, these are kind of trends that are going to continue to impact organizations and local governments across the country. So that's what I want to continue to do in 2023.
Great topics, friends. 2023 is shaping up to be an awesome podcast year. Woo. But before we do more podcast episodes, we got to get through the holidays. So I'm going to throw out another lightning round question. What's your favorite holiday tradition?
I'll go. In general, I don't really have unique holiday traditions, but I just the day before Christmas, the 24th, just being with friends and family and hanging out with them. I always try not to be the first one to go to bed because it's a sign of weakness. And something me that I really enjoy, and I know my wife's family enjoys. We also enjoy watching The Preacher's Wife, which is the best Christmas movie ever. So we'll probably do that as well.
I mean, that sounds great. The best Christmas movie, though, is The Muppet Christmas Carol, so how dare you?
That's not true. That's a lie.
Uh-oh.
That's a fiction.
I guess Toney and I are fighting now.
There's no need to fight. You're just wrong.
I know. I have an opinion here, too, but I'm not going to share it.
Now you have to share it.
You have to share it now.
Okay.
Impromptu lightning round question. Best Christmas movie?
I know. Gosh, it's so hard. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
What?
Close second, Die Hard, which I know is a controversial Christmas choice, but there you go.
None of those have Muppets, so.
I mean, I like the Muppets. Those are all good picks.
Dan, Kirsten, what's your favorite now? Now that everyone's on record.
Oh, jeez. Probably A Christmas Story is probably my favorite. I haven't seen it in a while, but used to watch it every year. It was consecutively run on cable, again and again and again. Then one time we ran into Peter Billingsley, who's Ralphie, plays Ralphie, and Vince Vaughn at Whirly Ball, which for those not familiar with Whirly Ball, it's a kind of not go-kart, but bumper cars game where you drive around bumper cars and kind of combination bumper cars and a high-lie, where you're chucking a ball with a special racket into a basket at a very high distance and crashing into your friends. And so I saw Peter Billingsley, Vince Vaughn, and Steve Byrne, he's a comedian, at the Whirly Ball in Lincoln Park, and they did not want to take pictures with us. That's what I got. Watch a Christmas Story, everyone.
Wait, who's Peter Billingsley?
Ralphie from
Ralphie.
Christmas Story.
Yeah, he played Ralphie in the Christmas
sorry.
Story.
I don't think I've ever seen this movie. I apologize.
I got to check out A Preacher's Wife. I feel like I'm missing out.
Oh, you are. You are.
I didn't think of that of a Christmas movie, but yeah, it's a Christmas movie. Okay, I'm gonna put that on my list to watch this season.
Put it in my queue.
Yeah,
And I'm gonna go Elf, just because it's always good. And then, I mean, maybe I'm just a little basic, but I do love The Holiday. So, yeah. But my favorite holiday tradition is something we do in our family, is that when Santa comes, he covers the doorway to our living room with wrapping paper. And then on Christmas morning, when our kids hear the magic bell, they get to run through the wrapping paper, bust through it like they're on WrestleMania, into the living room to see all of their presents. And so when they were little, it was like the cutest thing ever, because they were like excited, but they were tiny, and they'd create this like little tiny hole, and then they'd like see the magic that Santa had brought. But now that they're older, it's like having like a thundering herd of like wild elephants like running toward you at a high speed, and they just come tearing through the paper. But it's still just like such a joyous moment. And so I just look forward to that every year. It just really is fun to like watch the videos over the years as the kids grow up. So, Dan, I recommend this as something that your now 1-year-old could potentially start to take part in at some point for some holiday. You can also do it for birthdays. You can do it for any holiday that you want. But it really is a fun way to incorporate like WrestleMania and the holidays.
brilliant.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Do you actually have a real life Christmas bell? Like a designated bell that you ring?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And like, and they wait because they know it's not until they hear the bell. And then one year we couldn't find the bell, and it was like, but then we found it last minute. But it was like, we were like, what are we going to do? Just say like, hey. So, but yeah, we have the bell.
Hey, it's time for WrestleMania. Get on
Christmas.
Come on down.
Yeah, I have many great videos.
Someday.
I'll share them with you, Toney, so you can see
I would love
the joy.
to see it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh, well, that's very sweet, but my favorite holiday tradition is listening to all the episodes of GovLove, probably starting around like during Christmas dinner. I play them without headphones on consecutively, all 500 plus of them, and so my whole family has to hear them. And we try. I haven't done the math yet, but like we try to time it so that this episode of GovLove will end right at midnight on New Year's Eve, and so we start a new year having listened to all 500 plus episodes of GovLove. We did used to play a drinking game where we would drink whenever Ben said awesome, but until
That's dangerous.
I had
You're still alive.
I had to go to the hospital, and so we don't do that anymore. But encourage our listeners to pick other words if they choose to try this tradition. Ben, what do you got?
Yep. Once again, impossible to top.
Ben, you're killing
my
Dan.
favorite. Yeah, my favorite holiday tradition is putting lights on the house. Now that like we bought a house like a little over a year ago, so it's the second year in a row I've got to put them on my own house, which has been fun. And this year I actually redid some landscaping, took out some terrible hedges just to make it easier. And I was very proud of myself, and it made the lights look a lot better this year. So.
Ben, I just want to make sure that you didn't mishear the question, is what is your least favorite holiday tradition? Because I think you're the only person on the planet who enjoys this activity.
No.
Well, Ben and Clark Griswold. I mean, let's not forget like who he's morphing into. So.
I know, like Clark was. I know, but I feel like Clark was real stressed out and frustrated during that whole experience.
But that's why I
But
took
he
hedges
did
out.
love
It made
it.
it so much easier.
Wait, you took the hedges out for the sole purpose of the Christmas lights?
I mean, they were also ugly and terrible, but
Okay.
But yeah, that was a main reason. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Ugly and terrible would have stayed if not for the Christmas lights.
if not for how in the way they were. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. I'm impressed.
All impressive traditions, gang. But we must move on with our tradition, which is the GovieLovies. 2022 was a big year for GovLove with 72 episodes and over 220,000 downloads so far this year.
Thanks, Mom.
Plus, we released our 500th episode.
We also had 104 guests come on the podcast, and we'll be highlighting a number of those guests tonight. But true to our vision for GovLove, they range from city managers and elected officials to analysts and interns.
And our episodes were on some of the pressing issues facing local governments this year, from affordable housing and combating homelessness to improving organizational culture and employee engagement.
All right. It's finally time for what you all came for, the GovieLovies. We've each picked 3 episodes to award a GovieLovie. And another important part of this tradition is not talking about how we're going to talk about the awards process until we're live on the air.
Yeah.
And
That's key.
I think
it's free reign. It's free reign.
I think we traditionally settle on a snake draft and then have a conversation about understanding what a snake draft is. But I think that means I'm going to go first. Toney, Lauren, Ben, Kirsten does too, and then back. So I guess that means my number 3 GovLove episode is Diversity and Inclusion in Peoria, Illinois with Melody Green. That's right. DEI does play in Peoria. Some listeners might suggest I'm biased because the guest was an Illinois local government attorney that graduated law school in 2008. It's like I did. But that's ridiculous. The content of the episode stands on its own. I was seriously having dinner with a mayor at the Illinois Municipal League conference, and she was asking oh, what are other communities in Illinois doing about DEI programs? And I hold up my phone, and this episode dropped that very day. It's like downloading in my phone right now. Well, Mayor, you should listen to GovLove podcast with Melody Green. And then I did listen to the episode later because it did download finally. And it was a great conversation. Ben did this one talking about her career path for starters. It was interesting to hear how another local government lawyer got to the place that she ended up. And as is usual, a common theme on this podcast, it's not always the same for everybody. So it's those of interest to me, but also how the DEI work in her organization with employment and procurement, and not just working in the city and with its employees and boards and commissions, but also collaborating and borrowing from other communities and to build on or adapt their work for their own community, another common GovLove theme. And then even their work in the region on DEI. So that was an interesting listen. Encourage you all to check it out, download it 200,000 times if you haven't already. Ben, tell me some thoughts and memories from your conversation with Melody.
You covered some of the highlights. I mean, she was great. She was actually recommended by another former GovLove guest, Dr. Faris Muhammad, who was the first DI manager or director in Peoria before he moved on to Lawrence, Kansas. He recommended that Melody come on the podcast, and so we made that happen. One of my favorite things, Melody's episode is a great example of this, is just learning what equity looks like in each organization, because it can take on a different flavor, a different emphasis, depending on, what the local, the local values, the local problems, the local things that the community wants to see. And so, and that was a great example of how, she's working on procurement issues and internal employee diversity, if I remember right. And so that, it was a great episode. Good conversation with Melody.
All right, is it my turn?
Yeah.
You got it.
All right, snake draft pick number 2. So my number 3 is another Ben episode. This is leadership and career development with Eric Marsh. And similar to Dan, I'm not showing any bias here because Eric Marsh is one of my best friends. And, I'm always listening to him. He's a true friend. This is more about the content of the episode and not the person himself. But, I'll encourage you all to check that episode out. I just really enjoyed the conversation. I think sometimes we don't always talk enough in local government about, how do you develop a positive and strong and long-lasting career in local government, and some of the things that you have to do to be intentional about that work, both, with the people that you work with and yourself individually. And so, I know, as I said, I know Eric personally. I know he thinks deeply and a lot about that. And it was just really interesting to, hear his own thoughts about, how he has had to adapt and some of the intentional strategies that he's taken on in order to succeed in local government. So, yeah, I really enjoyed the episode. Ben, if you have any, other highlights that you would like to talk about, feel free.
No, I mean, similarly, Eric's a friend of mine, and we worked together when I was working for the city of Durham, and it's just, he's very thoughtful on that career advancement piece, and like, what are the skills you need? Like, how do you know yourself well enough to be a leader? And he talked pretty openly about how challenging like his current role as assistant town manager has been compared to, past roles. And then he also talked pretty openly about kind of, he left local government for a couple of years and went into healthcare. Not great timing with that whole pandemic thing. But like talked about why he did that and then coming back. And, Eric's one of the most thoughtful guys I know. And so it was just great to have this kind of like very honest conversation about that and about working through a career and navigating this kind of stuff. So, good pick, Toney.
Yeah, thank you. We're very unbiased. We have to be in local government. Can't show any favoritism whatsoever. So, with that being said, I'll turn it over to Lauren.
All right, thank you. My number 3 pick was becoming a city manager with Tanisha Briley of Gaithersburg, Maryland. This was a Toney episode. Toney, I was really excited when you were interviewing Tanisha because I know it. She knows it. Everybody knows it. I'm a big Tanisha fangirl. She's incredibly awesome and somebody I've just admired my entire career. We started out around the same time. We both have roots in local government in Iowa, so it's been fun to kind of watch her career develop. And repeat guest on the pod, I interviewed Tanisha last year, and the focus of our discussion was really about like the first 100 days or so in office when she was pretty new in her role. So it was fun to hear you interview her, Toney, and talk more about how things are going, how she's getting deeper into implementation on some of the things that she's working on. So yeah, good job. I really enjoyed that episode.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. One of the things that stood out to me talking to Tanisha is like, there's so many different paths to becoming a city manager that you wouldn't think about. Mm-hmm. And also being at that level is not for everybody either. It really takes a special kind of person to be able to do that role and excel in it. So, yeah.
Nice. So it's my pick now, right?
Yep.
Yes. So my number 3 pick for the year, and I'm not going to be able to say the word right, Lauren, so you have to correct me. This is a Lauren episode. It's the job of a prothonotary.
You said it wrong. Right? No. You didn't.
Prothonotary.
Despite all the, and this is with Noah Marlier from Montgomery County, PA, despite his education and trying to teach our listeners how to say that word, I still failed. But this is a great, I think shows kind of one of the cool things about GovLove we get to do is highlight some of the not odd jobs, but the unique roles in local government, the things that like maybe don't exist everywhere, even though there's a lot of similarities between a prothonotary and a register of deeds. Prothonotary. but he was such a engaging, like really engaging guest, really fun person to just hear talk about their work. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but he was just super open and welcoming. And I definitely watched his TikTok after you guys talked about it on the episode.
Okay.
Yeah. Lauren, anything that you'd highlight for that?
Thank you. Yeah, that was, I enjoyed getting to know Noah. That was not a fun episode. I had extreme anxiety about whether or not I was going to botch the pronunciation of this word on the episode. I practiced it so much. I think I still messed it up and we had to pause and do it over, but he was so gracious with me. But yeah, I mean, I picked that episode because it was like, this is weird. Let's learn about this. But I really enjoy getting to know him. And he had a really interesting story about things that he was doing in his office to be kind of innovative with service delivery, to be more responsive to the community. So I wasn't expecting that. Like, that was a nice little nugget to just hear some really relatable stuff that anybody in any position in local government could use. So thanks for picking that one. I like that episode too.
I also like that episode, and I don't know why, but before listening to it, I would have bet money. I don't know why, but I just thought he was a botanist. Like, he's doing something with plants. Government. I don't know why I thought that. But I was like a botanist for local government. Interesting.
I know, it kind of sounds like ornithology, isn't that birds? There you go.
All right, so if we thought that Toney and Dan were just picking episodes based on if their friends were on the episode, I'm going to take it to the next level, which I'm going to pick my own episode, which normally I do not do in the GovieLovies, but the only reason that I'm picking as my third choice is an episode I did with the counselor Bobby Wilson from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, on a bereavement leave policy for the loss of pregnancy that he was able to pass in that city. And the only reason I'm picking it, beyond the fact that he was a great guest, was it just reminded me of how the podcast and the work of the LGL can put new ideas out there that perhaps you haven't thought of, and then you can bring that into your own organization and advance that for the communities that you serve. And shortly after I did this episode, I had the chance to look at the contract for the union employees for the school district where I'm a school board director, and ask the question, do we give our teachers bereavement leave? It was a topic I hadn't thought about before. It was something I hadn't heard about other local governments doing. And so I just wanted to call it out as, when our listeners send us story ideas or when we come across something, it has the potential to reverberate beyond just that episode or just that city or county that we're profiling and affect other government organizations as well. So just wanted to throw that out there. Above and beyond the fact that bringing up something like this is a really sensitive topic. And for a male city councilor, it was something where he had to do a lot of research. He had to think through some of the other issues related to pregnancy loss. And so it was a heroic first step to take. And many other communities now have implemented bereavement leave for pregnancy loss as well. So I'll just mention that. I don't mean to sound self-serving. It wasn't just picking my friend, it was picking myself for this episode.
That was an important topic. Well done. And it's not something like I like considered or knew much about before I heard the app. So you got, like you said, bringing it to folks' attention.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so Snake Draft, I get to go again. I'm going to pick a Lauren episode. Women in Fire Service with Anna Koons and Danielle Dulin from Warrensburg, Missouri. I do note that this is a topic that you want to explore in 2023, and I'm glad for that, because I think as we think about the different ways that we staff and we approach all operations in local government, it's good to have the actual personal stories of the folks doing that work. So kudos on this episode. And I think we've done some profile in the past about some work in the city of Eugene to try to get more young women interested in fire service. But I think the more that communities and fire districts can be doing this type of work, it's important. So thank you for the episode. And you are my number 2 pick on the GovieLovies.
Thanks, Kirsten, I'm honored. Agree. Great episode, and I take no credit for it. Really proud of the work that they're doing there in Warrensburg, Missouri. Danielle Dulin is the city manager. A great woman doing good work, and she's a friend of mine. And so she kind of mentioned offhand to me, like, hey, we had this cool thing happen. We had a whole shift that was staffed by women. It's like, that is cool, and I think that's unusual, and we need to talk about it on the podcast. So it turned into a good episode.
Yep.
Very cool. Awesome. All right, so the snake comes back my way. So my number 2 pick. This is probably maybe the nerdiest episode I did this year. I talked to Nolan Gray, who wrote a book called Arbitrary Lines: The Case Against Zoning, and Nolan is a doctoral student at the UCLA. Works for the Lewis Center as a researcher there. But this book I thought was fascinating. It's a great just piece on like the history of zoning, its impact on kind of our communities today. And, if we got rid of it, our cities might be better for it, which, probably makes the planners that are listening to this want to, throw their phones across the room. But it's definitely, an argument that I think is worth listening to and worth exploring. And, I think he acknowledges that this is a radical proposal to completely eliminate zoning, not just single family zoning, but all zoning altogether. And he even says that, there's what do you do as a planner if that's something you get rid of, right? Like a lot of our planners' offices, and this is painting with a broad brush, obviously. But a lot of time and effort is spent upholding zoning regulations, reviewing plans, for alignment with zoning. So what do you do as an office if that's no longer, a part of your work anymore? And so he has some ideas around that. What is the future of planning without zoning? And I think it's definitely something that I'm interested in. I think land use is one of those things that impacts our cities and the way people live their lives without, ever being kind of on the forefront. It's just kind of it's like utilities underground, right? It's something that people don't even think about. But anyway, it was a fascinating book. It was one of those where I crushed it in like an airplane ride. I was like, I got to talk to this guy for GovLove, and he's also a great Twitter follow if for those that are still on the remains of the Twitter platform.
Well, and Ben, I will say that he was a Twitter celebrity to me, and so when he was on the pod, I was a little gobsmacked, and I think all the reason that hopefully something like Twitter can stick around, because it really is the place where nerds can unite and GovLove can bring people to life.
Yeah.
I gotta say, it was a good year on the pod. I had a hard time narrowing down to 3, so I'm glad that a lot of my honorable mentions popped up on your list, and that was one that I really enjoyed as well, Ben. So glad I got the shout out here. Okay, I think I'm next. My second pick was Transforming the 911 System with Rebecca Newstetter from the University of Chicago Health Lab. This was one of Alyssa's episodes. And this was probably my self-serving choice because our local government services department here at MARC includes our public safety and 911 team that oversees our regional 911 system. So I have a lot of interest in this topic. And this episode was just full of all kinds of information. She gave a really interesting historical perspective of how 911 came to be, which, sometimes these systems, we sort of take them for granted now, but, it had to be created and innovative, like not that long ago. And just understanding that not all 911 systems are created equal, kind of thinking about just how there's lots of room for improvement in a lot of areas of the country and that service isn't always equitable everywhere in the country, which I thought was really interesting. And then she had all sorts of good ideas about how we could get smarter about the way that we analyze 911 data and train 911 staff to get just better at service delivery. So that just, again, it's something that I work on in my day job. So it really spoke to me on a personal level, but I thought it was a really well-rounded podcast that kind of touched on a lot of different issues in that public safety realm.
Yeah, good pick. That was one of my favorites too. An honorable mention. I really enjoyed it. And similarly, I think 911 centers are kind of undersung heroes, right? Like that, you people,
Oh my gosh,
they're talking to people
100%.
every day and literally the worst hour of their life.
Right.
And such a hard job, and they don't necessarily get the shine that they should. And
For
there's
sure.
also such a great, like you mentioned, such a great data resource for solving problems in your community. And it's, I don't know. Yeah, that was a great episode.
Thank you for saying that, Ben. The people who are working in the PSAPs answering those calls are truly incredible public servants. And the people that I work with, like the technicians who are on the back end, like making these systems run, making the maps work, making the location. I mean, and take such passion in that work. It's awesome. It's why I love GovLove, because we're shining a spotlight on these people who are kind of behind the scenes, but really doing incredible work to serve the public.
All right. Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Okay. So for my number 2, I had troubling signs at the Supreme Court with Amanda, Lisa, and Brian, and Dan, you did this episode. I had this as my number 2 because, it aligns really well with Dan's sense of humor. Because, given, all the things going on this year, I was like, oh, this is a podcast about like some of the huge major things that the Supreme Court, they're talking about, and, the future of the Supreme Court. And like, I'm curious like how this relates to local government. And, I get like 20 minutes in and I'm like, wait, this is a podcast about signage? Like just like basic signage. Like, and I was so confused for the longest time. And then I was like, huh. So it's like a complete 180. But I did like the podcast because it is one of those things that we don't often think about, how, sometimes, there are a lot of cases being debated at the federal level that do have a huge impact on just like day-to-day local government stuff that we don't think about, are things that we don't think that local government, has to manage. And so, it was a really great podcast. I learned a lot. Never going to take any of Dan's podcast titles, for face value ever again. But yeah, Dan, if you want to talk about this one. Yeah.
Thank you, Toney. I'm flattered. Believe it or not, when we put this in this episode in as a session at the National Planning Conference, and so their online session, we partnered with them for that. And between the time we submitted the session and the time we recorded the episode, the Supreme Court did some things that got people's attention.
Yeah, that's why I was like, huh.
And
bold choice by Dan.
So that was not planned, and so we had to explain to everyone that we couldn't talk about everything that was troubling at the Supreme Court. Today we're just talking about signs, and so but that in terms of like Supreme Court cases that affect local governments, that Austin v. Reagan case that we talk about in the episode is probably one of those that had the greatest practical impact for local governments. It was a good decision for local governments. Time will tell how good, in terms of its effect on local power to regulate signs, which every community, many communities, nearly every community has to deal with. And the folks we talked to were just brilliant. They were the Amanda Karras from the International Municipal Lawyers Association, Lisa Saronin from National League of Cities, and Brian Connolly did the brief for APA, the American Planning Association, on that case. So these were the subject matter experts, and I was I'm a big fan of all of them, and so it was a thrill for me to do. Read all their briefs, talk to them about it, and on an important case, and I think hope it helped local governments as they were kind of preparing to respond to that case coming out of the Supreme Court. Anything else happening at the Supreme Court? I don't know.
Not going to find it there. Not going to find it.
But at least we addressed the science stuff. Appreciate it, Toney. We worked hard on that app, so glad to see it get some recognition. So my number 2 is addressing the rise of local official harassment with Brooks Rainwater from the National League of Cities. Kirsten did this episode. In terms of local official harassment, as a podcast, we are generally opposed to it. And I hope I'm not climbing out on a limb here when I say we are not in favor of that. It is an unfortunate trend that's become an important issue, and Kirsten did a couple episodes on this year that I thought were both important listens. This one made my list because I thought it did a good job explaining the problem, especially how this issue impacts underrepresented local officials from underrepresented groups and communities. And it also talked about some of the solutions that because we're a solutions oriented podcast gang. We're here to solve the problems, not create more problems to the extent that we can. But the promoting civility it's important part that I talk about in my practice. Important issue I talk about in my practice very often, advising elected officials to how they behave on and off the dais can influence the kind of tone of the discourse that they experience. And having a civility makes for more productive meetings and helps you get more done for your community. And I thought it was a great episode. There's some others that maybe we'll talk about later. Who knows? That I feel like are kind of a 2.0 or next level, more advanced, but the discussion on this important topic. But I think this is a good introduction in terms of addressing the issue. Many communities. Kirsten, I know this is an issue important to you as a local official yourself. Tell me what you took away from this episode.
Yeah, I think what I continually think about is, and this was before a lot of the very, obvious division in our country, but how do we recruit talented people to run for office? And how do we recruit them to run for office when, your biggest issue is, you have, marathon meetings that last until 11 o'clock at night? How do you get people to say, I'm going to step up and do that? And then you layer in things like, not everyone, has a job or has income that can support their ability to do that, or that not everyone has the family support or, the career flexibility. And so, those are all really tough challenges. But then when you layer in just the basic harassment and the way that people think it's okay to talk to people in government, you're just making an uphill climb even steeper. And I think we all have experienced it on the staff side, and to a certain extent, I think, especially if you've gone through, law school or a graduate program, you may be aware that this is an aspect of the job. But I think sometimes you get people running for office, especially at the local level, and that's not what they expected. And so you're seeing folks not run for re-election or quit or, not run at all. And so, to me, the fact that National League of Cities is addressing this and then also recognizing that there are even greater impacts in communities where we're desperately trying to get representation in elected office. I mean, I'm just glad that they tackled it, continue to tackle it, and just recognize the real problem it creates when we're trying to elect representative leaders into local positions and give them that foothold to potentially pursue higher office as well. So thanks for recognizing the episode. And, Brooks was a great guest. And again, just pleased that NLC is continuing on with that work.
And not just a good episode too, but the report that he's on there to talk about, check that out too.
Important absolutely, yes,
for everybody. It impacts all of us who work in local government. So, Snake Draft is ending for me. My final pick is the employee engagement and culture with Dan Biles from Pasco County, Florida. Ben did this episode. He's many-time guest. I could see why Dan was talking about how he kind of built up his organization working in Pasco County and, building and communicating the value to their employees and making the electeds and others in the organization understand the value of the team, not the employees. They refer to them as the team around there, which is a nice term, a way to talk about it. And he talked about like building trust with employees and delegating and how to be a good manager. Obviously, as a partner at a law firm, I'm perfect. I'm a great manager. There's no room for improvement. Our law firm also does everything right all the time, and just want that on the record. But the listening to Dan talk about how he works as a manager, I think about it every day when I look at my to-do list. After I wipe the tears away, I think about what he said in this episode, which is only do what only you can do. And that was a bit of advice that resonates with me, and it encourages me to reach out to help with other people in my organization. And it's good. It's good for me. It builds good for the organization, which is already perfect. It's even more perfect now after listening to this episode, Ben. And the best part is what Ben the thing Ben dropped at the end of the episode. He's like, Dan Biles says, "Oh, and also Dan, you're leaving the country and going to teach leadership and right off in Southern Europe and right off to the sunset." He's like, "That's right. And remember these words that I said to you, and remember me always. Bye." So it's like, it was just like, a great listen. Like, oh, I'm so inspired, and I'm like waving at my podcast device, and as he rides off into the sunset. It was an inspiring episode, Ben. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Dan Biles is a great guest. I think it was his third time on GovLove, and each time it's managed to be like in a time of transition for him. And he had just announced that he was going to leave Pasco County, I think, when we sat down to record that. But he's doing some, I think it's mission work, but also leadership development work for his church, if I remember right. But yeah, Dan's a great guest. I think, the only do what only you can do is great advice. I also, the one that I still think about is he talks about him and his leadership team, like when they feel pressured to make a decision, but they don't know what the right answer is. He'll literally just like, we're going to sit on this and we're not going to think about it. And we're going to let our brains kind of work through the problem. And I know that like when I feel like pressured that like, oh, we got to figure this out, we got to do it right now. Like I never performed very well under that. And so like to know that like, it's okay to like, let your brain do some thinking in the background and that they build that into their kind of decision-making process. I thought was really interesting and cool. But Pasco County, I mean, part of why we did the episode was Pasco County was recognized as one of the best places to work through ELGO's award program. So we wanted to highlight that and highlight that award program, which then turned around and had, some other great recognizers, winners this year. So, but yeah, Dan, that was a great episode. Good pick.
Thanks for doing it. That's it for me. On to Toney. And I think he's got one that was on my list too. So what you got?
Oh, this wasn't in your top. This wasn't top 3, but it was on your like overall. Okay.
Oh yeah. It was an honorable mention to be sure.
Honorable mention. All right. Well, I'm glad I can get in here. So my number 1 was making zoning easier to understand with Sarah Bronin. This is one, Ben, you did earlier, and one of the reasons why I really enjoyed this one was, we've been talking a lot on this podcast or this episode about, zoning and planning and how it impacts our communities and all of that. And so this one was interesting because this was someone who actually, tried to make zoning easier to understand for the development community and the residents in the area. I think she's in Hartford, Connecticut.
Yep.
Yeah, so in Connecticut, and she has some great materials like the equity, sorry, not the equity atlas, but the zoning atlas that she has, which was a national model, and then just taking time to actually look at the it wasn't the UDO that they redid, but their actual like zoning, their guidelines. It's just like so much easier to understand than what you would typically find anywhere else in the country, and so I really enjoyed seeing a real life use case of someone actually trying to make our zoning policy easier to understand and actually implement it in the real world, and have some zoning reforms that a lot of the country's been talking about too is also in there. So I enjoyed that entire conversation.
I thought this one was interesting because of a remark that Ben made during the episode, talking about Sarah's career path, about like, oh, I don't know too many people that go to law school to be a land use attorney. Ben, I thought we were friends.
Yeah.
That's
I
what
said about the exact same thing. I was
Just
like,
Dan,
Dan.
Anyways, but it's still a good episode because what Sarah had to say about like making zoning easy to understand and user friendly, trimming down the use table. That's what I do when I work on, or I do comprehensive rewrites of zoning codes myself. And I went to law school to do it. And it's very interesting. It's easier for staff. It's easier for the public. It's easier for the elected officials to use. It makes for a better product in the built environment. So great episode. I'm glad to see you recognize it, Toney.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay. I think I'm up. So many good episodes this year. So hard to pick, but my number one pick, Dan already did a teaser for me. Thank you. Was Mayors and Local Political Violence with Heidi Gerbrocht and Sue Thomas. This is the other episode that Kirsten did that kind of focused on this conversation around how hard it is to be in public service in the modern era. And I really liked this episode because the passion of the three women on this call just really came through. It's like you've got these three brilliant women who are just having this conversation about the future of our democracy. And like, I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that they were really like a call to awareness and urgency that if we don't shed a light on some of these issues and stop normalizing it is like, well, you signed up to run for office, so sucks to be you. Like, no, this isn't okay. And we need to call it out as not okay, or things are never going to change. So I felt all the feels after this episode. I felt depressed and overwhelmed and inspired and like I wanted to do something. And it just, that's how you should feel after every GovLove episode. Just ready to go and do something and make a difference. So good work, Kirsten. Really shined a light on an important topic and just really well done. I learned a lot.
Well, I can't help but notice, on Lauren's wall, she has a work hard and be nice poster. And, longtime ELGL members will know that we put work hard and be kind on the bottom of the socks that we give out. And, I feel like those episodes and a few others this year, it's easy to focus on kind of the hard hitting, here's a policy to pass or here's a program to implement. But sometimes it just comes down to these issues of civility and being kind and recognizing that at the local level, we're at the front line of government service. And, we think about it at the staff level of providing that service out, but I think it's becoming more important for us to talk about kindness and civility as it relates to, how our elected officials are treated as well as staff. So, I hope that we don't lose that focus on kind of the human side of the work that's being done. And again, just that tie back to, doing great work, but then ultimately at the end of the day, just being kind and being good to each other. So thanks for the recognition on this episode. And Heidi and Sue are phenomenal people and doing important work.
And the training they mentioned at the they discussed during the episode sounds like next level. It sounds like it's terrible that it's the kind of training that needs to exist. But it sounds like they're doing very important work, and I was glad to hear you talk to them about it.
Yeah, well said. All right, so I think it's my turn in the snake. So my number one episode of the year that I want to give a GovieLovie to was an episode Toney did called Building a Culture of Equity with Dana Perry from Wake County, North Carolina. This was a good one. I always enjoy right away when Toney starts to get roasted by the guest, which I think happened within 5 minutes of the
That's not how
recording
that
starting.
I was doing the roasting, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Like almost immediately made fun of Duke, which was great. But Dana was awesome. I think this equity and diversity and inclusion work is really hard to talk about. And so it's always inspiring to hear someone that can talk about it so eloquently and so forthrightly. And I think he had just started, I think, right, Toney, when you talked to him at Wake County. So he's obviously just in the early stages of the work there, but has been involved in, other aspects of this kind of work in the area. But anyway, I really enjoyed the conversation. I really think this is, again, one of those areas of local government that, more organizations are going to be trying to do. And so turning to people like Dana, who can kind of explain it in a very coherent way for organizations that, maybe this is new for them or it's going to be a hard conversation. I think there's some good lessons from somebody like that who can, who's doing the work and is sharing kind of their perspective. But I don't know, any highlights for you, Toney, other than getting roasted?
There was no roasting again. That's not how that went down. I would encourage everyone to check out the podcast and get the true story. Danya is a really interesting person. He really has a really great vision. He has a really interesting story about how he got into the work, it's like DEI work is not easy to do in local government. There are a lot of horror stories. And so I really wanted to, take the opportunity to talk to Danya, as he was starting off the work and trying to understand the organization and, really talk about what his vision was for where he wanted to take Wake County in terms of, his own vision and understanding of equity in an organization and local government. And, for somebody who just has just absolutely terrible choices when it comes to picking sports teams. So it's fascinating that those people can exist, but still also be, really competent in other areas. It was a great discussion.
All right. And I have the last pick of the draft, and I'm going to go with another episode that Toney taped when he was at the NFBPA conference in Grand Rapids. And it was the impact of the Great Resignation with Ronnie, Dampier, Melody Lenox, and Margarita Hudgins. I was a fan of all three episodes that Toney was able to tape while he was there. And I know we recognized the one earlier he did with Tanisha. But I think that when GovLove partners with other organizations to shine a light on their rising stars or the topics of interest in those organizations, similar to what he did with NFBPA, what Dan has done with the American Planning Association, we've done in the past with the International City County Managers Association. It just adds a richness, I think, to those conferences and learning experiences. It helps our listeners and the ELGL members participate in those events from afar. And then I just love that we're able to bring to light or, showcase some of the rising stars in those organizations. When we were putting together the partnership with the LGL and NFBPA, Ronnie was really kind of the guiding light in making that happen. And so being able to recognize and see that, and then also just get the perspectives from these different organizations was really valuable. So I'll also just kind of throw it out there as a call to action for our listeners. If you are involved with a local government conference and you want GovLove to participate, I think we've made it clear that we all love that. We would love to do more of it. So just keep us in mind. And it's usually pretty easy and straightforward. And, hopefully, and I'll turn it back over to Toney for his reflections on that. But I think it was also just a great experience, on our end of things too for GovLove. So way to go, Toney, and thanks for producing my favorite episode of the year.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. Yeah, that was a really interesting one because that one, we recorded it live and it was like a panel session, for the conference. So it was a completely different format than what I was used to. So it had a little bit of a different flavor and context for me. But yeah, it was just a really great conversation. And, it's something that we've been talking about in local government as a trend for a long time. And, it's now kind of starting to happen and pick up steam. And so, yeah, it's something that we really are having to grapple with around the country about how we're going to, keep talent, replace talent that's left, and, deal with this wave that's still coming. In a lot of ways, we haven't seen the peak of it. So just being able to have that conversation in that setting with people and even take, actual live listener comments, questions was also great. So yeah, it was a really, really great experience.
Awesome. Well said, all. So that ends our GovieLovie awards. I did get our producer Pizza Mike did text in his favorite episode of the year. So it was from librarian to city manager with Abigail Elder in Hood River, Oregon. He said, hands down, the best episode of the year. Funniest guest by a mile was his quote. So thank you, Pizza Mike, for all your hard work this year. And well, that's another great pick. We really appreciate everybody for sticking around, and thank you to all our great guests for coming on GovLove. Before we go, we've got two more things to do before we wrap up. But first is Can't Let It Go. So what's one thing, before we kind of do our exit music, our traditional end of the podcast, what's one thing that you can't let go right now that you're thinking about and mulling over?
Yeah, so I'll start. For me, it's World Cup soccer. It should always be this time of year. This is like the most World Cup soccer that I think I've ever watched. And it's just been great. I was talking to Ben before the podcast that I'm going to Little Rock, Arkansas with my wife's family. We're going this weekend, but one thing I didn't say is we are driving. We're going to consciously decide to leave here in North Carolina like 8 p.m. so we can get into Little Rock at like 9 a.m. so we can watch the finals.
That's awesome.
Like we completely rearranged our schedule so we could do that. So yeah, it's been a great World Cup, and I hope we get a really great finals and a really great a team like I'm rooting for Argentina, Morocco, in the finals, and hopefully Messi can finally get his World Cup championship, but we'll see.
Wow, Toney, I fell asleep a little bit when you were explaining
Wow.
I think soccer is the most boring.
Same. High five, Lauren.
It's such a snooze. Why are people obsessed with this sport?
Wow.
It's a giant bore.
Wow.
Sorry, I'm going to get some hate mail over that. I'm sorry, but oh my gosh.
I feel
we'll
so
post Lauren's
attacked.
email and the notes to this episode.
For what it's worth, I feel the same way about baseball. Like the whole league's trying to do things to speed up the game. Like get it done already. Sorry, tangent.
What's what's the thing you can't let go of, Lauren?
Thank you. Back on track. I hope you make it in time to see her game.
Oh, we
that
will.
Sounds intense.
We're going to make it.
And I hope you love it, and I'm glad that you love it.
No, you can't take it
and
back now. You can't take it back.
I do not have to be there to watch it. So bad. Kirsten backed me up on this. It's so boring, but I'm glad you love it. Okay, I can't let go of handshakes. I mean, what a disgusting social tradition that we need to just stop doing. But I mean, I can't let go of that nice, warm, comforting welcome. It's nice to see you. So I'm sorry, I'm perpetuating this gross social tradition. I hope somebody else will shut it down and that we can start doing elbow bumps instead.
Wait, what's your take here? What? I'm confused. We should no longer do handshakes, but you can't stop doing handshakes?
Correct. Thank you for explaining that more articulately than I did.
Okay, I got you.
Yes, I can see that they are gross, but I can't stop doing them in a social setting.
For the listener, more than one person on the screen kind of like made a yucky face when she described the handshake as warm, and it just reminded me of sweaty, gross,
like a moist handshake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not say moist.
Yeah.
You all took it to the next level. But every one of you knows what I'm talking about.
We lost our last listener just now.
The worst kind of handshake is like the hand is bigger than yours and it's sweaty, but then they put their other hand on top of your hand and you just completely surrounded. It's horrible.
It's the universal symbol for pleased to meet ya. Come on, society, we gotta come up with something better. We gotta embrace the elbow bump or the wave, something. But I'm part of the problem. It's me. Hi. I'm
the problem.
Be the change.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. Dan, what do you got?
Well, what I can't let go is, of course, Fighting Illini football. It's our best season, one of our best seasons the entire century. Vegas predicted us to go win 4.5 games this year. We won 8.
Wow.
We are going to be at the ReliaQuest Bowl. I will be there in Tampa on January 2nd. Look for me on the TV. I will wave at you and just celebrating just what our first Florida Bowl game since the 1999 MicronPC.com Bowl. And it's just Fighting Illini football. The whole season was just an exciting ride. It was just so meaningful to me to bring my son to games and the team actually be good. And we're just so excited. And you can apply what the Fighting Illini football team this year in your own careers, dear listeners. Exceed low expectations. It's what I've done in my career and gotten to where I am. And if you're predicted to win 4.5 games, go win 8. It'll be a life-changing season for you.
Yeah.
Do it.
What is their mascot and color and team colors?
They're orange and blue. The mascot we don't have to talk about, or school symbol, but they are the Fighting Illini. So,
gotcha.
Chief Lenox no longer with us, but the Fighting Illini fight on at the ReliaQuest Bowl, January 2nd.
Way to go.
See you there.
So
Ben, what should I do in Florida?
Tampa's awesome. Go to Clearwater and St. Pete, and there's a great county park at the bottom of the peninsula that Pinellas County is on. It's essentially across the bay from Tampa. It's called Fort DeSoto Park. It's worth checking out.
Sounds good. I'll check it out.
I can't wait to see the Brett Bielema statue that Dan puts in his front yard. So the thing I can't let go, the season finale was last night as we were recording this. It is White Lotus, the TV show on HBO about it is, I don't know what Dan's doing. This is good. That great. Sorry, Dan's bobblehead distracted me in the middle of my can't let it go. But
what is that thing?
What is that?
Sorry. Ben asked for a statue of a Fighting Illini athletics coach, and I have a statue of, for the listener, a statue of Fighting Illini basketball coach Bruce Weber, bobblehead on the stream, on the video, just ruining Ben's Can't Let It Go segment. Ben, take it away.
What?
Thank you for that, Dan. I can't let go White Lotus. The season 2 is better than season 1. That's all I got to say.
Wow.
Okay.
All right.
Well, and I figured we have sports and we have TV show and we have gross social traditions. So I decided to class it up a bit with a book. And so my favorite book of the year, and you should read it as you listen to this, is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. It was a book that actually made me cry when it was over because it was over. It was just beautiful. It's a story about friendship, which I think is something that we can all appreciate here on GovLove, but also my favorite book of the year. And I can't stop thinking about it. And now I wish that I could go back in time and become a video game producer or video game designer, because it was just beautifully written.
I am ordering this from my local library right now. I'm always looking for a good book rec.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Also, use your local libraries. They're awesome.
Libby app is the best.
You should also get a book about soccer. Just while you're there. Just throwing it out there.
If I'm like to help me with my nighttime sleep routine.
Oh my god.
Anyway,
did we just talk about like civility and stuff?
Right. What's from a place of love?
Yeah, we did talk about civility, but someone chose violence today.
It's truth bombs. I don't know.
The key word there is bomb.
Sorry.
So
I'm trying to course correct.
Now in the tradition, it's too late. Now in the tradition of GovLove, we have to pick some exit music. But to mix it up, we're going to have each co-host give a song and let our esteemed producer, Pizza Mike, pick the song for this episode. Ben, what exit music are you throwing into the ring?
So I went to my Spotify Wrapped for inspiration, and my most listened to song was for this year was "Trick to Happy" by Bahamas. It's a great song, nice and cheery, good to sing along to, good instrumentation in the background. But that was the whole album. It's called Sad Hunk. It's a great album. But "Trick to Happy" by Bahamas.
Nice.
And I picked Beach House by Carly Rae Jepsen. And it's because as you listen to that song, you're just kind of bopping and, it's good. And then all of a sudden you kind of like wake up and like listen to some parts of it. You're like, woo. And it reminds me of a really good GovLove episode that makes you just sit up and pay attention. So give it a listen. It's a bop.
Gotcha.
It's a bop.
It's a bop. Sorry. We're boppers here. So mine is "This Is How We Do It" by Montel Jordan. It's a classic. It's got a great beat to it. It's just the spirit that every ELGLer should have. Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong at all. Lauren.
Love it. Good pick. I loved your pick for that question, Toney.
I saw your face. You don't.
My pick is kind of on that theme. I picked a classic, "Don't Stop" by Fleetwood Mac. I'm still kind of processing the death of Christine McVie. I'm a big Fleetwood Mac fan. And also this song also has a great theme for local government public servants of being forward thinking and persevering through hard times.
Nice.
That's my pick.
Nice pick. Ben, I also went to my Spotify Wrapped to pick my exit music song. I was very surprised to discover this year I was in the top 3% of all Spotify Taylor Swift listeners. I did not know that about myself. But I kept scrolling down the list looking for good exit music. I picked "Everybody Wants to Rule the World" by Tears for Fears. It is great song for you new dads out there. If you're spending a lot of time burping babies, it's got that 3-on-2 polyrhythm, and I would just yeah, the police are here to get me. Anyways, the 3-on-2 polyrhythms when you're burping the baby, it's very effective. It's fun. Mix up the late nights. So great song, jam. And also I guess the local government podcast, I suppose Everybody Wants to Rule the World is a government podcast. That's also the theme.
Wow, top 3%. That's impressive.
Yeah,
impressive.
I don't know what to say. I'm so surprised.
Own that. I mean,
I guess that's just who I am now. I'm a Swiftie, guys.
You're a Swiftie.
Yeah. Okay.
You're a super Swiftie.
Super Swift. Yes.
That's right. Add that to my LinkedIn profile.
Oh my god. Bring us home, Kirsten.
All right. So this ends our episode for today, and I want to thank everyone for joining us. GovLove is brought to you by ELGL, the Engaging Local Government Leaders Network, and is hosted by all of us. You can reach us online at elgl.org/GovLove or on Twitter at GovLovePodcast.
And you can help us out, first of all, by joining ELGL if you're not already a member, and then by subscribing and leaving a review on your favorite podcast app. That helps spread the word about GovLove, and so more people can find out that we are the go-to place for local government stories.
ELGL is the Engaging Local Government Leaders Network, and we're a membership organization. So if you love GovLove and you're not yet a member, please sign up today. Membership is a steal at $50 per year, and you can sign up at elgl.org.
If you have a story idea you'd like to share, reach out to us on Twitter or email. Some of the episodes we talked about today were the result of outreach from our members about cool things happening in their organizations, and we turned those episode ideas into a podcast.
Thanks for listening to this and also our new spin-off podcast for dogs, only broadcast at their frequency. But this has been GovLove, a podcast about local government. 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year! Bye.